As the 2024 U.S. presidential election approaches, global interest is rising, especially from key international observers. Among them, a highly perceptive Chinese analyst provides insightful predictions on the potential outcomes of the election. This individual's sharp understanding of U.S. politics, combined with a deep awareness of international relations, offers a unique perspective on the implications of various election scenarios for both the U.S. and the world. In this detailed analysis, we will explore his predictions and the potential consequences of the election from a global perspective. The observer recognizes that the 2024 U.S. presidential election is more than a domestic event. It is pivotal for global geopolitics and will likely set the tone for international relations in the next decade. The political landscape in the U.S. is deeply polarized, and the election outcome could significantly shift policies on trade, climate change, immigration, and relations with global superpowers like China. From his vantage point, this election isn't just about who will lead the U.S., it's about the distribution of power between the presidency and Congress, particularly the House of Representatives. The alignment, or misalignment, between these institutions will determine how effectively the next president can enact policies. The 4 key election scenarios. In his analysis, the observer outlines 4 main scenarios, each with different implications for U.S. domestic and international policy. These scenarios include 1. Republican sweep. Donald Trump wins the presidency, and both chambers of Congress are controlled by Republicans. 2. Democratic sweep. Kamala Harris wins the presidency, with both the House and Senate controlled by Democrats. 3. Trump wins, but Democrats control the House. A divided government with Trump in the White House and Democrats holding the House of Representatives. 4. Harris wins, but Republicans control the House. A similarly divided government, but with Harris as president and a Republican-controlled House. Let's dive into each scenario, exploring how the analyst predicts these outcomes will shape U.S. policy and, by extension, the world. 1. Republican sweep. A return to Trump's America. In the first scenario, the observer assigns a 39% probability that Donald Trump will win the presidency, and Republicans will control both the Senate and the House. This would mirror the situation in 2016 when Trump first took office, but this time with even more momentum to push through his policy agenda. In this outcome, Trump is expected to prioritize tax cuts, deregulation, and protectionist trade policies. The observer notes that a Republican-controlled Congress would likely facilitate Trump's fiscal plans, including significant cuts to corporate taxes, aimed at stimulating economic growth. However, such growth may come at the expense of increasing the national debt and possibly exacerbating income inequality. On the international stage, Trump is likely to resume a confrontational stance with China, including higher tariffs and tougher negotiations on trade agreements. The observer stresses that this could result in greater economic uncertainty, especially for Chinese exporters who are heavily reliant on U.S. markets. Additionally, Trump's isolationist tendencies could strain U.S. relations with traditional allies, creating opportunities for China to strengthen its geopolitical influence in regions like Europe, Southeast Asia, and Africa. Trump's policies on immigration and energy will also see a revival. His commitment to fossil fuel industries and skepticism toward renewable energy may slow global efforts to combat climate change, posing challenges for countries committed to the Paris Agreement. 2. Democratic sweep. Harris at the helm. The second scenario, with an 18% probability, envisions a Democratic sweep with Kamala Harris as president and Democrats controlling Congress. According to the observer, this would likely lead to policies similar to those under President Obama, with an emphasis on social welfare, healthcare reform, and environmental protection. Harris is expected to champion a progressive tax system, increasing taxes on corporations and the wealthy to fund social programs like healthcare and education. The observer points out that this would have a mixed impact on the economy. While higher taxes might slow down growth, they could also reduce economic inequality and provide a safety net for the underprivileged. From a foreign policy perspective, Harris would likely adopt a multilateral approach, working more closely with international organizations and allies. This could improve diplomatic relations between the U.S. and its partners, though it might complicate relations with China, especially on issues related to human rights and trade. However, the observer notes that Harris is less likely to escalate trade tensions with China to the level seen under Trump. One of the key differences under a Harris administration would be a focus on renewable energy and combating climate change. The Observer predicts that the U.S. would rejoin and fully commit to the Paris Agreement with aggressive targets for reducing carbon emissions. This could catalyze global green energy investments, benefiting countries like China that have already established themselves as leaders in renewable energy technology. 3. Trump presidency, Democratic House, political gridlock. In the third scenario, with a 13% probability, Trump wins the presidency, but the Democrats retain control of the House. This would result in a divided government, similar to the situation after the 2018 midterm elections. The Observer highlights that this is the most likely scenario to result in political gridlock, especially when it comes to fiscal policy. Trump's tax and trade policies would likely face significant opposition from a Democratic House, making it difficult for him to pass legislation. As a result, Trump might resort to executive actions to push through his agenda, particularly in areas like trade, immigration, and national security. From a global perspective, this scenario could lead to increased volatility. The Observer predicts that Trump, frustrated by domestic opposition, might focus more on foreign policy, including imposing tariffs on China and withdrawing from international agreements. This would create uncertainty for global markets and could lead to heightened tensions between the U.S. and its trade partners. 4. Harris presidency, Republican House, policy paralysis. Finally, the least likely scenario, with a 5% probability, is that Kamala Harris wins the presidency, but Republicans control the House of Representatives. In this case, the Observer predicts a scenario similar to the final years of the Obama administration, where the president faces constant opposition from Congress, leading to policy paralysis. Harris would struggle to pass major legislation, particularly on taxes and healthcare. The Observer believes that this would result in a continuation of the status quo, with few significant policy changes. On the international front, Harris would likely continue diplomatic efforts, but her ability to implement substantial changes to trade or foreign policy would be constrained by the Republican House. This scenario is seen as the least favorable for the U.S. economy, as it would result in political stagnation, with neither party able to implement their full agenda. The Observer also notes that this could weaken the U.S.'s global standing, as allies and adversaries alike might perceive the U.S. as politically unstable. The implications for China and the world. For China, the Observer emphasizes that the outcome of the U.S. election will have far-reaching implications. Under a Trump presidency, the likelihood of continued trade tensions and tariffs would pose significant challenges for China's export-driven economy. However, the Observer also notes that a weakened U.S. on the international stage could create opportunities for China to expand its influence in global institutions and build stronger relationships with countries alienated by Trump's policies. A Harris presidency, on the other hand, would likely result in a more stable and predictable U.S.-China relationship. While tensions over issues like human rights and technology would remain, Harris is expected to pursue diplomatic solutions rather than aggressive trade measures. This could provide China with more room to maneuver economically, though the Observer cautions that Harris's environmental policies might pressure China to accelerate its transition to renewable energy. In conclusion, the Chinese Observer's analysis of the 2024 U.S. presidential election offers a sobering view of the potential outcomes. Each scenario presents its own set of challenges and opportunities for both the U.S. and the global community. For China, the key will be navigating the uncertainty and preparing for a range of possible outcomes, from continued trade tensions to a more cooperative international environment. This detailed breakdown of potential election scenarios provides valuable insights into how the 2024 election could shape the future of U.S. policy, global trade, and international relations. As the world watches closely, the outcome of this election will undoubtedly reverberate far beyond America's borders.